Professor Patil is the president of ELT, English Language Teachers Association of India, Pune chapter. He has been teaching English language and literature at several schools, colleges, institutes, centers, universities in India, abroad for more than 4 decades. He is a retired professor of English and head of Department of Training and Development, English and Foreign Languages University at the University of Hyderabad. Since then, he has been freelancing in India and abroad. He did his MA, MPhil and PhD from the same university, Pune University. He did a postgraduate certificate in the teaching of English from Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages. He was awarded with a British Council scholarship in 1990 and did a diploma and MA in TESOL from University of Edinburgh in United Kingdom. His areas of interest are English language teaching, pragmatics, stylistics, teaching language through literature, teaching English to multilingual and multicultural groups, teaching English to speakers of other languages, using support materials to teach English, employability skills, motivation, classroom management, teacher development materials, and new varieties of English. Professor Patil has, to his credit, to 20 textbooks, 8 resource books, 80 articles published in national and international journals. He has successfully guided 10 MPhil and 24 PhD scholars. Presently, 2 PhD scholars are working under his supervision. He has evaluated more than 50 PhD theses submitted to Indian and foreign universities. He has delivered and sponsored 32 invited keynote addresses and 78 plenary talks at national and international conference in Bangladesh, Britain, Canada, China, Dubai, Germany, India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Nepal, Oman, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Thailand, and Turkey. In addition to it, he has contributed to several seminars and conferences as a panel discussant and panel discussion moderator. He was invited to deliver special talks and conduct workshops for students and teachers at university in Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Nepal, Singapore, Thailand, UK, and Vietnam. Professor Patil has bagged thousands of awards under his bag. He has received lifetime membership award from English Scholars Beyond Borders, ESBB, International Group of Scholars, Outstanding Contribution Award from Rajasthan Association for Study in English, Udaipur, India, Lifetime Achievement Award from North Maharashtra University, Teachers Association, Jalgaon, Maharashtra, India, Emeritus Professor Award from Kanya Mahavidyalaya, Jalandhar, Best Educationist Award from International Institute of Management and Education, New Delhi, Maharashtra Bhushan Rajastri Chhatrapati Sahu Maharaj State Level Award for Excellence in Education from Milinda Sasna Singh Maharaj, India. We are so much delighted and overwhelmed to see Professor Patil with us. I remember a session that I attended in 2072 at Little English in NENTA conference. He was a very marvelous key speaker to listen. He will be facilitating on aspects of spoken English today on the session number 1 in the 4th day of this international virtual conference organized by Promise number 7. Over to you, Professor Patil.
Thank you very much, my dear friend, and a very good morning to you, friends in Nepal. A very good morning to you, friends.
Good morning,
Today,
sir. Good morning.
I'm going to talk about the different aspects of spoken English. As you know, spoken English is a very important skill, or speaking is a very important skill. Now, I'd like to begin with the first things first. What are the goals of teaching English in our countries, in Nepal and in India? The goals of teaching English in our countries are different from the goals of teaching English in Britain or America or Australia or New Zealand, for instance. Now, since I've been teaching English to rural students in India and abroad, I have prioritized my goals like this. My first important objective as far as the teaching of English is concerned is to instill confidence in my learners, because many of my learners are first generation learners. Many of them come from villages and little towns. So to begin with, they are nervous, they are shy, and they're victims of inhibitions. So my first responsibility as the teacher of English is to help them overcome their diffidence, their nervousness, their inhibitions. So I would like to, first of all, instill confidence in my learners as far as spoken English is concerned. My second objective is to enable my learners to be fluent in the use of English, in the use of written English as well as spoken English. So I have set for myself three important goals as far as the teaching of English in our countries is concerned. Number one, I want my learners to be confident. Number two, I want them to be fluent. And number three, I want them to use English appropriately. And finally, I want them to use English accurately. So there are four important goals, or three important goals of teaching English in India or in Nepal. We want to instill confidence in our learners. We want them to use English fluently. We want them to use English appropriately. And finally, we want them to use English accurately or correctly. These are our goals. Now, please remember, I'm talking about these goals in the context of the teaching of different aspects of spoken English, right? Now, when we talk about aspects of spoken English, we need to consider certain things. For example, we need to take into account the intelligibility aspect of English. Now, when I say intelligibility, I mean local intelligibility, national intelligibility, and international intelligibility. As you know, the new varieties of English are deviant in terms of grammar, in terms of use of vocabulary, in terms of pronunciation, and so on and so forth. So one frequent complaint that we hear about the users of English in the so-called non-native countries is that their English is not intelligible. Now, as long as I'm in Maharashtra, my Marathi English works. But the moment I cross the borders of Maharashtra and enter another state of the country, or the moment I leave the borders of India and go to another country, to Britain, to Australia, to New Zealand, for instance, I face certain problems, or I may face certain problems. So before we start talking about aspects of spoken English, we need to keep in mind certain things. Number one, we need to keep in mind the four important goals of teaching English in our countries. And the four important goals of teaching English in our countries are enabling our learners to be confident, enabling them to use English fluently, enabling them to use English appropriately, and enabling them to use English accurately or correctly. That's number one. Number two, we need to bear in mind the concept, the notion of intelligibility, because intelligibility is a very important aspect of spoken English. Now, when I say this, I don't want to advocate the use of British English or American English or Australian English and so on and so forth. Now, you can see now that my English is neither British nor American nor Australian. My English is very much Indian variety of English. But I can say it with humility that my English is perfectly intelligible to Nepalese friends, to British friends, to American friends, and they don't have to ask me to repeat what I have said time and again. So intelligibility is the second aspect that we need to keep in mind when we talk about aspects of spoken English. Then, before we actually start talking about the important aspects of spoken English, we need also to say a few things about difference between spoken English and written English. It's a matter of common sense that the two varieties of English, spoken variety of English and written variety of English, are not identical. They're different. They're different in terms of grammar, in terms of use of words, in terms of so many other factors. For instance, the words that we use when we speak English are simpler, are easier than the words that we use when we write in English. Secondly, the grammar of written English is rather more complex, and the grammar of spoken English is not that complex. It has got to be simple. So the vocabulary of spoken English is easier, the grammar of spoken English is simpler, and when we speak in English, or in any language for that matter, in Nepalese or in Hindi or Marathi, we use hesitation markers. We don't use them deliberately, they just happen. We use hesitation markers, we use fillers, and we use monitoring features, and so on and so forth. So we need to keep in mind certain things before we start talking actually about the important aspects or significant aspects of spoken English. And as I said, number one, we need to keep in mind the important goals of teaching English, enabling our learners to use English confidently, fluently, appropriately, and accurately. We also need to remember the factor of intelligibility, that we need to be intelligible not only to our countrymen and countrywomen, but also to our friends in the other non-native countries and our friends in the so-called native countries. We need to be intelligible to all of them. And thirdly, our aim is not to be able to use the exact British or American or Australian or Canadian variety of English, but our own variety of English. But we need to take care, we need to see to it that our English, our variety of English, our native variety of English, our own native variety of English is intelligible to everybody around us. And then we also need to, as I said some time ago, we need to bear in mind the differences between spoken variety and written variety. Now, let me start talking about the important aspects of spoken English. And I'll take them one by one, and I'll try to illustrate all these aspects with examples. The first thing is pronunciation. So when we talk about spoken English or speaking, we of course need to talk about pronunciation. If we want to be good speakers and good communicators in English, we need to master the pronunciation of English. For example, many speakers around us say opportunity. They don't say opportunity. Many of them say, for example, familiar. They don't say familiar, right? So pronunciation is a very important aspect. For example, many of our friends say epitome instead of saying epitome, right? They say extempore instead of saying extempore. So pronunciation is a very, very important aspect. Wherever I go and talk about aspects of spoken English, I try to cite as many humorous examples as possible. Now, I'm very fond of these examples because these examples are my first-hand experiences, because I taught English in Vietnam and I taught English in Japan, and I've delivered lectures in so many other countries. So I've collected lots of data, and I use those data to illustrate my main ideas, my points, and also to teach English effectively and efficiently in different classes in India and abroad. So pronunciation, we need to master the pronunciation of English if we really want to become good speakers of English. Now, I briefly spoke about mispronunciations, that certain words are usually mispronounced by the so-called non-native speakers of English, Nepalese speakers of English or Indian speakers of English, and so on and so forth. So we need to be careful. And what is important is intelligibility, right? The British speakers say, for example, they try to insert the r sound between two words like idea and is. Because the word is begins with the vowel sound, British speakers try to insert a r sound there, my idea raised. Now, this is not important. Secondly, it's not important for us to aspirate certain sounds. We don't have to say cat. We don't have to say put. We can just say cat and put. So aspiration is not a very significant aspect of spoken English. It doesn't bring about a change in the meaning of the words. So we don't have to be so careful about aspiration. We don't have to run after it or master it. But when it comes to unintelligibility, when it comes to misunderstanding, then we need to be careful and we need to pronounce those words properly. Now, I keep telling my students, if you really want to master the pronunciation of this language or any language for that matter, then you can identify certain patterns of pronunciation and you can practice one pattern each week. For example, there is a pattern called osophy or ology, psychology, philosophy, choreography, and so on and so forth. So what the students and what the teachers can also do is to select or to choose a pattern and practice it, rehearse it, week after week. So there are about, let's say, how many weeks are there in a year? About 50. There are about 50 weeks in a year. Now you can subtract, let's say 10 weeks, because you have to entertain guests, you have to go on a tour, and sometimes you're not feeling well. So you're left with 40 weeks a year. So you can practice at least 40 patterns of pronunciation over a year. And by the end of the year, you can realize that your accent, your pronunciation is very, very good. Right, so patterns are very important. The first important or significant or vital aspect of spoken English is pronunciation. We need to master it in order to be intelligible. Secondly, I believe that words have their own personalities. I have a personality, you have a personality over there. Each one of you sitting in that particular hall in Nepal has a personality. And our personalities have different aspects or facets to it, right? Physical personality, spiritual personality, psychological or mental personality, intellectual personality, and so on and so forth. In the same way, by the same token, each word has a personality. And there are different facets to this verbal or vocabulary or lexical personality. Phonic aspect is there. So we need to be careful when we pronounce words. We need to pronounce them properly, accurately, and also appropriately, because appropriateness is very important. Let's cite an example. Some time ago I spoke about developing confidence and enabling our learners to speak English fluently, appropriately, and accurately. In my opinion, accuracy, of course, is important, but what is more important than accuracy is appropriateness. Sometimes we connive at or we ignore pronunciation mistakes and grammatical mistakes committed or made by our learners or our colleagues and friends and neighbors and visitors. But we are very serious about the tone of their spoken English or the tone of their written English. I personally would prefer that spoken English which has a few mistakes of pronunciation and collocation and grammar and so on and so forth, but which has a very polite and courteous tone. So tone is very important. So a word has a phonic personality. A word also has a graphic personality. So when we write a word, we spell it accurately. Like, for example, mnemonic. How do we spell the word mnemonic? Mnemonic device. The word, the first sound in the word is n, but the first letter is m. Mnemonic. So we need to spell words properly. Incidentally, there is no one-to-one correspondence between letters and sounds in English. I don't know about other languages, but as far as English is concerned, you know and I know that there is no one-to-one correspondence or relationship between letters of the English alphabet and sounds of the English language. By the way, many people say there are 26 alphabets in English. Now, let me tell you that there is only one alphabet, and the alphabet comprises 26 letters. It consists of 26 letters. So there are 26 letters, but there is just one single alphabet. Now, let me go back to the correspondence between letters and sounds. Here is an example. The fat father narrated the tale of the fallen angel. Now, let's look at the use of the first letter of the English alphabet in this utterance. And that first letter of the English alphabet is the letter A. The fat, in this word, the same letter, the letter A is pronounced as A. I'm talking about correspondence between letters on the one hand and sounds on the, on the other. So in fat, A is pronounced as A. In father, the same letter is pronounced as or articulated as A. Narrated, in the word narrate, the same letter is used twice. N-A-R-R-A-T-E-D. So A appears twice. In the first case, it is a. In the second case, it is a. So A in fat, A in father, A in no, A in rated, the tail, again A of the fallen, fallen. The same letter is pronounced as O. So this simple example, this concocted or made up example, shows to us or tells us that the relationship between letters in English and sounds of English, or letters of English and sounds of English, is not one-to-one. Sometimes one letter is used for several sounds, and sometimes several letters are used for one sound. So we need to keep this this graphic phonic correspondence in mind before we or when we talk about words and their personalities. A word also has, as I said, a word has a phonic personality, the sound, the pronunciation. A word has a graphic personality, the spelling of the word. And the word also has a grammatical personality aspect to its personality. For example, the word present is present. It is pronounced as present when it is used as a noun or as an adjective. And the same spelling, the same word, the same graphic form of the word is pronounced as present when it's used as a verb. So it's not just a matter of pronunciation, different pronunciations of the word present or present, P-R-E-S-E-N-T, but also a matter of grammatical aspect of the personality of the word P-R-E-S-E-N-T. Then a word also has a contextual personality. A single word can have 10 different meanings in 10 different contexts. We embed a word in this context and we have this meaning. We embed the same word in that context and we have that meaning. So there is a phonic aspect, there is a graphic aspect, there is a grammatical aspect, there is a contextual aspect, and there is a semantic aspect. A word has a meaning, and usually, we know that a language doesn't exist in a dictionary. A language doesn't live in a grammar book. A language lives and exists in contexts, in the society out there. So, but a dictionary gives us meanings, basically meanings. Sometimes a dictionary may give us or can give us different contextual meanings, but that's very rare. Usually a dictionary is a list of semantic aspects of the personalities of words. Then we also have a pragmatic aspect to the personality of a particular word, that sometimes the word is positive but the meaning is negative, and vice versa. So when we talk about aspects of spoken English, we need to remember pronunciation and how to master it. And we need to remember the different aspects of the personality of the words, like phonic, graphic, grammatical, contextual, semantic, and pragmatic, and so on and so forth. Stress is also very significant. There are 3 types of stress, actually, I want to talk about. One, word stress. A word may consist of one syllable or more than one syllable. For example, in the word word, W-O-R-D, there is just one syllable. And the center of this syllable is the vowel sound, word. The nucleus of the syllable is in this particular vowel sound. But this word has only one syllable. I'm not saying it is not stressed. It is stressed. I mean, each syllable is stressed. We can't say unstressed. People say this syllable is stressed, but that syllable is unstressed. It's not unstressed. Certain syllables are stressed more strongly than other syllables, but all syllables are stressed, more or less stressed. So word stress is important. Like, for example, photograph, P-H-O-T-O-G-R-A-P-H, photograph. In the word photograph, the first part of the word, that is pho, the word has 3 parts, 3 syllables, photograph. In this case, the stress falls on the first syllable, photograph. When we change this word, when we add an ER to this word, the word's accent or stress moves from the first syllable to the second syllable. Photographer, photograph, photographer. And in the case of the word photographical, the stress falls on the third syllable. So photograph, photographer, and photographical. This is what I mean when I say we need to remember that there is word stress, something called word stress. Now, there are a few words, about 50 to 60 words in English, not many, there are just about 50 or 60 words in English, which carry grammatical stress. And I give you one example in a different context, and that example is present. When it's used as a noun or adjective, it is pronounced as present, present. And the accent, the stress falls on the first syllable, not on the second syllable. But when the same word is used as a verb, the accent or the stress falls on the second syllable, present. Right? Like this, there are a few words like object, object, subject, subject, convict, convict, produce, produce, and so on. I can go on and give you a long list of words, but you can find out all these words from a dictionary, for instance, or a book on phonetics and phonology. So there is something called word stress, there is something called grammatical stress, and there is something called sentence stress. Now let me give you a few examples. Suppose you say, Mr. Patil, you had a session this morning, but you didn't appear. And then I can say, but I was there. Suppose you say you were not there on the screen. Mr. Patil, you were not there on the screen, and because I want to contradict what you have said, I'll emphasize the word was, and I'll say, but I was there. In usual context, was is not pronounced as was, it is pronounced as was. I was there. And we'll talk about weak forms very shortly in a different context, but in the broad context of spoken English, of course. So there is something called word stress and something called grammatical stress and something called sentence stress. Let me give you another example of sentence stress. Let's say I have a sentence or utterance like this. Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday. Now I can convey 5-6 different shades of meaning, not completely different meanings, but shades of meaning, using different locations of stress in this particular sentence or utterance. Say, suppose I want to emphasize, I want to draw attention to the breaker of the window. Then say, Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday. So the focus is on the breaker, right? And then I can move the stress from the first word to the second one. Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday, right? Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday, not Zn Patil. Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday. He didn't paint it, he broke it. Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday. So I'm not talking about that window or that window, I'm talking about this particular window. So I highlight the word this window. And suppose I want to suggest that he didn't break a door or a tool or a stool or a teapot or something like that. Then I say, Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday, not a door. And suppose I want to focus my attention, your attention, the listener's attention to the time of the breaking of the window. Then I say, Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday. And suppose I say, Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday, not today. This is what I mean by sentence stress. Word stress is not mobile. You can't move. We can't move word stress from one part to the other part. For example, I can't just, suppose I say photograph, right? Or I say photograph, and Motikalaji says photograph. I mean, we don't have freedom to pronounce or to accentuate or to stress words differently. What is photograph for me is photograph for everyone coming from all parts of the world. What is photographer for me is photographer for everyone coming from any part of the globe. So word stress is fixed. It cannot be moved from one part to another, except in the case of those words like present and present and produce and produce and convict and convict. Only those handful of words can be manipulated like that with a purpose. So we've said a few things about enunciation, about different aspects of the personality of the words, and about word stress, sentence stress, and grammatical stress. How about rhythm? Do you think rhythm is important? Yes, of course, it is important. And one complaint about Asian speakers of English is that their English is, or our English is, sing-song English, that we don't use proper rhythm. Once I was observing an English lesson in a school. I was invited as a subject expert, and the district education officer was with me. We were sitting at the back of the class, and the teacher was reciting the nursery rhyme, actually reading from the printed book, the nursery rhyme, Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. This is the way he read the nursery rhyme from the book. After the class, I called him in camera, in private. I didn't want to give my advice or my suggestion to him in the presence of other people. So I called him in camera, in private. And I said, are you a socialist? He didn't understand the intent of my question. But then he said, why do you want to know whether I'm a socialist or a communist or a Democrat or whatever? I said, why did you emphasize each and every word of the nursery rhyme? There are certain words which are functional words or structure words, and there are certain words which are content words, information carrying words. It's like a train. A train consists of different coaches, several coaches or compartments. And the compartments are joined with the help of buffers. So the compartment is like a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb, information carrying word. And the buffer is like article, preposition, conjunction, and so on. So I said, if I were in your place and if I were to recite this nursery rhyme, I would do it like this. Jack and Jill. So I would not have said, and I would have said, Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. A pail of, not a pail of. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. This is what is meant. This is what I mean when I say we need to be careful as far as the rhythm of the language is concerned. Now, rhythm is everywhere. When we go to a beach, we look at the waves on the shore, and you see ripples coming one after the other. When we listen to the clock on the wall, we hear tick-tock, tick-tock. When we place a stethoscope on the chest, on our chest, or on somebody else's chest, and listen to the working of the functioning of the heart, we say drum, 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 drum. So there is something called light and something called heavy, something called weak and something called strong, right? So there is a rhythm, there is a pattern of strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak syllables in English. So it has its own rhythm. Now in this context, we need to talk about weak forms. Now, when we talk about weak forms, we of course talk about prepositions like, let's say, of, right? It is not off. In connected speech, we don't say off, we say of, right? Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. So it becomes of, not off. So prepositions are weakened. Articles, like we don't say an usually, but when there is a special purpose, we do use the strong form. For example, when we are teaching grammar, when we are teaching articles, we say a is an indefinite article. An is used before words which begin with vowel sounds. So in these cases, we can say a and an, but when we use a and an in connected speech, we don't say them as a and an, we say them as a. I want an umbrella. We don't say I want an umbrella. I want an umbrella. I want an apple, right? I saw a man. I saw a snake, a man, an umbrella, right? So these are weak forms. Please remember that there is one more class. I mentioned prepositions, I mentioned articles. I must mention auxiliary verbs, or helping verbs, which include modals like can, must, shall, and so on and so forth. So can becomes can, shall becomes shall, must becomes must. Similarly, have and has become have and has, or have and has. Right? There are many variations within the context. So prepositions, articles, helping verbs are usually weakened in connected speech, and that is one of the factors that adds to the rhythm of this beautiful language. Now, spoken variety of English is characterized by certain other features, a few more features, and one of those features is question tags, right? Isn't it? So when we use a question tag, our spoken English becomes living English. If you, for example, if we converse for 1 hour, if two people converse for 1 hour or 2 hours, and neither of them uses a question tag, then that conversation is rather monotonous, So question tags are very important. They are an important feature, a vital feature of spoken variety of English. And I don't have to delve deep into the grammar of question tags. You know that usually when the sentence is positive, the tag is negative, and vice versa. Mohan has done the homework, hasn't he? Mohan has done the homework, hasn't he? Right? She hasn't left, has she? So positive sentence followed by negative tag, negative sentence followed by positive tag. But tags are very important. They are a very important feature of spoken English. And we need to use question tags time and again. Contracted forms is another feature of spoken variety of English. When we write a formal document, I'm not talking about informal letters. In informal letters, for example, you can use short forms or contracted forms like hasn't, isn't, wasn't, weren't, shan't, won't, right? And he's, that is, he is, right? Or he has. He's can be a contracted form of he has or he is. He's left, right? He's done, or he's there. In the sentence, he's there, the stands for is. And he's left. In the sentence, the stands for has. So contracted forms of auxiliary verbs and contracted forms of pronouns followed by verbs are an important feature of spoken English. When we discuss different aspects of spoken English, we need to also consider given information and new information, because sometimes I come across people, students as well as teachers, who all the time use full sentences. For example, where do you come from? If this is the new information, the rest of it is given information. Chandra Bahadur is the new information, and the rest of the sentence is, the unspoken sentence is given information. So given information is not repeated, only the new information is offered or given. Focus is an important aspect of spoken English. Like, for example, let me go back to another sentence, for example. Okay, let me cite the same example and then go to the other example. Which window did Kiran break in the evening yesterday? This one. So the answerer will give me only the new information, right? So given information and new information, these are two different aspects of spoken English, or English for that matter, but we are talking about spoken English presently. Focus is also very important. Let's look at this utterance, which consists of 3 words: I should go. I can focus my attention and I can draw your attention to either I or should or go, and I can convey different meanings or even 4 meanings or more than that. So I say, I should go. That means not you. I should go. That means you can't stop me. And I should go, that I'm seeking your advice. What's your opinion? Do you think I should go? So I should go, not you. I should go, you can't stop me. I should go, I'm seeking your advice. And the 4th one can be, I should go. That means I'm supposed to go, but I'm not sure whether I'll be able to go or not. This is called focus, and we can use intonation for this particular purpose. And we're going to talk about intonation shortly. So the distinction between formal and informal varieties of English is applicable to this this topic, aspects of spoken English. Spoken English is usually, not all the time, not always. Spoken English is usually informal, and written English is usually formal. Now let me cite an example. When her father died, Radha had to find another job. When her father died, Radha had to get another job. 1. After her father's death, Radha had to look for another job. And number 3, on the decease of her father, Radha had to seek alternative employment. Now, I'm sure you have understood the point that the 3rd sentence, on the decease of her father, Radha had to seek alternative employment, is very formal. It's a frozen kind of sentence, all right? It's a very frozen sentence. It's a very formal sentence. We usually don't use such sentences unless we are required to, for the purpose of creating humor or something like that. So the first 2 are relatively, comparatively less formal or relatively comparatively informal. And the 2 sentences are, when her father died, Radha had to get another job. Is informal, or semi-informal, semi-formal. After her father's death, Radha had to find another job. This is also not formal, but the 3rd one is very formal. So when we speak, we need to keep this distinction in mind. Otherwise, people will laugh at us. Many of our friends in Nepal and in India and other countries speak as if they were books. And the reason is that we were taught through Shakespeare and Dryden and Pope and Chaucer and so on and so forth. And we try to speak as if we were walking, talking books. And our English becomes very formal. And that's why sometimes people giggle. They laugh at us, or they laugh at our English. So we need to keep this distinction in mind. Contrast. We can suggest a contrast through our tone, for that matter. For example, let me go back to the same example because you remember that example for a variety of purposes. Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday, right? When I say Kiran broke this window in the evening yesterday, I'm contrasting the act of breaking the window with the act of making the window, and so on and so forth. So this is what I mean by contrast. Suppose somebody who is not very familiar with politics in India and who doesn't read newspapers or whatever, and he says or she says, Nirav Modi is the Prime Minister of India, isn't he? Nirav Modi is the Prime Minister of India, isn't he? And I know that it's not Nirav Modi. Nirav Modi is in London seeking refuge there. He is not the Prime Minister. So I say, no, Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India. So I'm contrasting Nirav with Narendra. So for that purpose, I use emphasis or focus. So contrast is an important function of tone of voice. Focus is another, as I explained some time ago. There is something called common core English, common core variety of English. Let me give you an example. Feeling tired, Ashok went to bed early. Feeling tired, Ashok went to bed early. The second sentence is, Ashok went to bed early because he felt tired. And the third one is, he felt tired and so Ashok went to bed early. Now, the common core consists of those two sentences. The first one is rather formal. It appears in written discourse, like feeling tired, Ashok went to bed a little early, right? Now, tone group is also very important. For example, if it rains, the match will be cancelled. The utterance consists of two tone groups or sense groups, meaning groups. And the comma is an indication of the end of the first tone group or sense group or meaning group and beginning of the second tone or meaning group. So, for example, if it rains is the first tone group, the match will be cancelled is the second tone group, right? So we need to observe tone group breakups when we talk. Otherwise, our English becomes unintelligible, sometimes incomprehensible. There is the difference between unintelligibility and incomprehensibility, but I don't want to go into those details right now because that's not our focus. So tone groups are very important. Pauses are important. We are not robots, so we naturally require, to take breath. We need to inhale and exhale, and for that particular purpose, at least, we need to take pauses. Pauses can bring about a change in the meaning of the utterances. For example, I say, he failed in English, history, mathematics, and geography. He failed in English, history, mathematics, and geography. So I have taken a pause between history and mathematics. And of course, the last pair is going to, join with the help of the connector or conjuncting words, connecting word and. So he failed in English, pause, history, pause, mathematics, and geography. Suppose I remove the pause between English and history. In the first case, there are 4 subjects. If I remove the pause between between English and history, there will be only 3 pauses. He failed in English history, mathematics, and geography. So in the first instance, when there is a pause between English and history, there are 4 subjects, right? And he failed in all the 4. In the second instance, when there is no pause between English and history, there are only 3 subjects, and he failed in 3 subjects. What's the meaning of English? What's the meaning of English history? History of England. He failed in history. He failed in English. Pause. History. Pause. Mathematics and geography. He failed in English history. No pause between English and history, but pause after history. He failed in English history, mathematics, and geography. So in the first case, English and history were 2 different subjects. In the second case, English history is 1 single subject, history of England. So pauses can change the meaning of utterances. They're very important, and we need to master pauses as well. Intonation is important. Now, I'll not talk about all different types of intonation or patterns, all different patterns of intonation, but I'll focus only on the 2 frequently used patterns, and these 2 patterns are falling pattern and rising pattern. Now, when do we use the falling pattern? In which cases do we use the falling pattern? We use the falling pattern in the case of a statement, in the case of an order or command, and in the case of a WH question. Where were you yesterday? Where were you yesterday? My voice falls. My voice falls. Where were you yesterday? Right? Have I used a rising tone? No, I haven't. I have used a falling tone. Where were you yesterday? This is the WH question, and that's why my voice came down, fell down, or fell. do this for me. This is a command, this is an order. And therefore, I've used a falling tone. So WH questions take falling tone, usually, not all the time. There are a few exceptions here and there. WH questions take falling tone, orders, commands take falling tone, and statements also take falling tones, right? At the moment, I'm talking about aspects of spoken English, right? Or we're talking about aspects of spoken English. So falling tone is used for statements, WH questions, and commands. Rising tone is used for yes, no questions, requests, and when there is a list of things, like for example, let me give you an example. I said that a rising tone is used for yes, no questions and requests and list of things. For example, have you done the homework? Have you done the homework? Rising tone, right? It's a yes, no question. You can say, yes, I have. No, I haven't. Sorry, I haven't. I want to seek information from the boss because he has decided to send me to Mumbai, and I'm not in the awareness, in the know of things. I'm not aware of it. So I'm flying to Mumbai tomorrow is a statement. The words are the same. The word orders are the same. I am flying to Mumbai tomorrow. 6 words, same words in the same order. In both the cases. In the first case, it's a statement. In the second case, I'm going to Mumbai tomorrow, which is a yes-no question, and the boss will say, yes, I've decided to send you to Mumbai tomorrow. Oh, or no, you're not going to Mumbai. I haven't decided to send you to Mumbai. So the words are the same and they appear in the same sequence in both the sentences or utterances. But in the first instance, it's a statement because the tone is falling. And in the second instance, it's the yes-no question because the tone is rising. So this is called, these are examples of grammatical function of intonation. I also said that intonation expresses or indicates or suggests the tone of the speaker. Positive tone, negative tone, friendly tone, unfriendly tone, intimate tone, formal tone, and so on and so forth. Suppose I go to Kathmandu next week, right? And I go to Motukalaji. She invites me to her house and she wants to introduce me to her family. She's a very kind person. So I go to her. It's my first visit to her place. It's my first day in Kathmandu. And I say to her, Motikalaji, I'd like to have a cold drink. I'd like to have a cold drink. The tone is, now, I'd like to have a cold drink is a falling tone because I'm making a sort of statement. But if I say it with the rising tone, it will become a request, right? As I've already said to you. So I'd like to have a cold drink. And she will say, because she's a very polite person, she will say, you would? You would? Now, when you listen to these two sentences, you would, you realize that the tone is rising. And rising tone is usually very polite, very friendly, very hospitable, welcoming tone. So, Motikalaji, I'd like to have a cold drink. And she will say, you would? She is a very hospitable person, very friendly person. She wants to offer eatables and drinks to me. And I keep going to her house every day for a month. And it's 31st of the month, the last day of the month. And I say to her, Motikalaji, I'd like to have a cold drink. She may not say what I'm going to say, but usually the host will say something like that, using that particular tone. Motikalaji, I'd like to have a cold drink. And she may say, you would. I know. You've been to my place every day. You come to me every day, and every day you ask for a cold drink. And I have exhausted all my salary, monthly salary on your cold drinks, on your hospitality. She wants to say so many things, but she doesn't say all these things because she's a very polite person. But she expresses her attitude to me as a guest through her falling tone. The rising tone is hospitable. On the first day, her tone was very friendly, hospitable, welcoming, offering tone. Maybe for the first week, she was like that. But gradually, the second week, third week, and last week of the month, her tone changed from rising to falling. And I understood that she was sick of my visits, or I understand that she is sick of my visits, and I stopped going to her, right? So tone is also expressed, can also be expressed through intonation, right? So we need to pay attention to intonation patterns as well. Now, one or two last points, actually the last point. There are so many other things that I'd like to talk about today, but since our time is limited, and since we need to keep some time, reserve some time for questions and answers, I'd like to say a few things about just one or two points. Now, do you think polite expressions are an important aspect or important part of spoken English? I think so. Your spoken English cannot be acceptable, cannot become acceptable and appropriate unless you use certain polite expressions, and these polite expressions are very important. Like, for example, when we take part in Formula One race, or when we play cricket, or when we play even soccer, or so many other sports, we use certain pads. Why do we use certain pads? We use certain pads because we want to protect our knees, our elbows, our heads, and so on and so forth, our abdomens, and so on and so forth, from the fast ball or pace bowling or whatever, right? So we use pads, protective measures, to protect ourselves physically from so many things. Similarly, we need to use pads to protect our relationships with our neighbors, our family members, our colleagues, our employers, our friends, and so on and so forth. All these relationships are very important. It takes us years and years to establish and to strengthen relationships and ties, but it takes only a few minutes to break these lovely relationships. And therefore, it's very important for all of us to use polite expressions like, thank you so much, Motikalaji. I'm so grateful to you, Motikalaji. I can't thank you enough, Motikalaji, right? If I have done something wrong, I say, I promise, Motikalaji, I won't do it again. I promise it won't happen again. I apologize. I regret for this particular kind of behavior, so on and so forth. Now, one day, since I come from a farming family, one day I was sitting under a banana tree, and suddenly the banana flower that was hanging from the tree, banana tree, caught my attention, drew my attention. And I began to ponder, began to think about the banana flower. I opened one layer of one layer of leaves from the flower, the conical flower, and what I found was tiny bananas, baby bananas, very fragile, very cute, easily breakable baby bananas. And then I said to myself, isn't Mother Nature so creative? Isn't Mother Nature very caring? Why is it that she has couched or placed these baby bananas between two layers of leaves in the banana flower? Why is it so? And then I myself found the answer, and I said, because Mother Nature wants to protect her babies, these baby bananas, from heat and dust and rain and storm and cattle, maybe. She has placed these baby bananas between two layers or covers of leaves. And then I said, aren't our relationships with other people similar to these baby bananas? Shouldn't we be protecting these? Shouldn't we be using covers which exist in the form of expressions like thank you, sorry, I apologize, you are such a wonderful person, you are such a beautiful person, and so on and so forth. Now, complimenting people on their achievements, on their appearances, on their successes, and so on and so forth is an important strategy. And we can use complimenting to establish relationships, to strengthen them, to consolidate them, and to preserve them, safeguard them, continue them. Now, when we teach English in our classes, what we do is we summarize the story or summarize the central idea of the poem, but we neglect very many significant, vital, important aspects of the language that we are teaching, all right? We dictate notes on summaries, on paraphrases and so on and so forth, but we don't draw, or we fail to draw the attention of the learner to such aspects of pauses. For example, when we teach plays, any play for that matter, Shakespearean play or Johnsonian play or Osbornean play, John Osborne play, any play for that matter, all these features of spoken English or spoken variety, spoken language are available. We need to tap them, we need to exploit them, we need to draw the attention of the learners to these resources which are already available in the form of conversations that take place in that particular play on those plays. But that's not done. Hardly is it done. We don't do it. And we waste many beautiful opportunities of teaching language and developing their spoken English, developing their spoken communication skills, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much for inviting me, Motikalaji and Joshiji. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm happy to do something for my colleagues in Nepal. And Nepal is like my second homeland, and I've said it time and again, right? I've received love and affection and hospitality, plenty of these things from my Nepali friends, and I would love to go back to Nepal again and again, right? So I look forward to meeting you again. I think we have met again. We already met a couple of times. I've been to Nepal 5 times, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not wrong. And I'd like to visit Nepal again and again and again. And I'm sure he will say, the doors are open, Mr. Patil. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Patil, for your penetrating presentation here, the sharing. We know that it has the comments we have been just seeing here in chat box depicts what sort of presentation they got today from you. Thank you so much. On behalf of Nelta Center, whole Nelta family of Nepal. So we'd
I'm
like
a life member. By the way, you know that I'm a life member.
Yeah, I know, sir. I know. So, we do not have word to express that. How
It's my
can we
pleasure.
show our
My
gratitude to
pleasure.
you? Thank you so much for being with us. But because of time limitation, we are unable to go for interaction right now, sir. I apologize for it.
No problem. But if they have a quick question, maybe 1 or 2 questions they can ask.
Yes, please. So, dear friends, if you have any question, if quick question,
Quick
because
question.
it will not be in 2 minutes, 3 minutes,
Yes.
5-second question, please. Anyone?
And I heard some people talking when I was talking here. Maybe their mobiles were not muted. So they can ask questions now.
Yes. Yes, friends. Anyone has any query? Please raise your hand. I could just unmute you.
It seems that no
Okay.
one has a question.
Damodar Giri, sir. Damodar Giri, sir, are you there?
Yes, sir. Your question,
Yes.
please.
Hello.
Okay.
For a
Damodar,
wonder.
yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes, please.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Patil, for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
And most of the time, we try to be like native live speaker, and actually, what makes different or obstacles us to be like native speaker.
Okay, thank you for this question. It's a very important question, very good question, very probing question, and it's a very frequently asked question. Now, as I said at the right at the outset, my objective, your objective, our objective is not to emulate, blindly imitate the so-called native speakers, because even within Britain, for instance, there are so many varieties. When you go to Yorkshire, you are face to face with one variety of English. When you go to Glasgow, you are face to face with another variety of English. So even within a small country like Britain, there are so many different and deviant varieties of English. Sometimes these national varieties of English within Britain tend to be unintelligible to themselves, right? Like somebody from Glasgow may not be easily understood by somebody who is a resident of London, for instance, and vice versa. So I don't think we aim at that particular kind of blind imitation or blind emulation or blind copy of the so-called native speaker. What I said is we want to attain comfortable intelligibility, not absolute intelligibility. Like wherever I go, whether I go to Britain or America or Australia or New Zealand or Philippines or Vietnam or Japan, nobody should say, Mr. Patil, I'm sorry I didn't get you. Mr. Patil, could you please repeat yourself? I'm sorry I didn't get you, I didn't catch you. I don't want people to say that. So my aim is not to use British, Australian, American, Canadian variety of English. My aim is to use Indian variety or Asian variety of English, which is internationally understandable, internationally intelligible. So let's not imitate those so-called native speakers blindly. I hope I've answered my question. Your question?
Yeah. Of course, sir.
Yeah,
Of
thank
course.